So I often have this familiar feeling that I'm feeling right now at the end of a really intense couple of days. And I don't know if anybody shares that sense of like, oh, geez, what do? I don't know if you know, but there's a meeting going on back at your offices. Everybody who works with you got together and said, hey, they're off at a conference. They're going to come back with a bunch of ideas. If we all stick together, this will all blow over in a week or two. Like just stick together. And so what I want to do is, if you're feeling that way, I would love to just take a minute and sort of settle in a bit. I know this is a Jolt conference and it's been exciting and jolting and loud, but I'm feeling the need to sort of calm down just for a second. And maybe it's just me. In fact, looking at all of you, it looks like you all are ready for more jolting. I'm just wondering if we could settle in out of our heads and down into our bodies just a little bit, maybe like crazy idea, maybe into our hearts for just a second. Because what I'm curious about is, what are you going to actually do? Right? Like, what are you going to actually do? Because I'm here to tell you that wherever the windows are, the people out there need your help. It's not getting any better. Right? They're not feeling any better about their relationship with money. The world, whether the world's more uncertain or not, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It feels more uncertain. And in order for that to change, you actually have to go do some of the things you've thought about doing the last 2 days. And I know that can feel overwhelming. I was talking, so I'm curious if we can kind of try to identify one thing. And I was talking to a bunch of you, and this is sort of the experience I've had, and I always have at these conferences. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. This is incredible. I'm so excited. This is great. This is incredible. And then this thing happens. Or I'm like, oh, no. And I was just talking to one of you, Paul, who was telling me, I'm 18 years in the business. Growth has never been a challenge, and it isn't now. But I've got young'uns. I've got the youngs working for me now. And I'm wondering if growth is going to be hard for them. I was talking to another friend of mine who's like, but I don't want to be doing video, right? And didn't we just learn now we have to be bold, too, right? And all of this, and I feel like I end up getting like stuck in the middle because there's so much thinking going on. There's so many amazing ideas, so many like high mindset, like go motivational ideas. And then at a conference like this, so many really good tactical things that we learned in breakouts, like specific things to do. And there's more than any of us can do. So I don't really know what, and I would never pretend, like I don't really even know what I'm going to do. But I'd love to take the next 32 minutes and kind of figure it out together. So what I'm hoping we can do is we can come out the other side. And I think of this as like, this was really simplistic thinking over here, right before I came in. This is all the complexity, the nuances, the edge. Wait, I'm not sure about video, and do I do audio, and how do I be authentic? No, I've got to be authentic. Isn't that an interesting challenge? I got to try so hard to be authentic. Oh. So I've always found that so fascinating. Like, what does it even mean to be me? Right? And then somehow I got to pop out the other side at elegantly simple. Right? The simplicity on the other side of complexity. And there's an interesting thing that happens when we start to come out here. Because I'm going to tell you most of this path, sorry this has gotten so messy, I'm actually not that sorry, but it's messy. When this path over here, there is no path. Right? At least I come to conferences like this, I'm like, I want the path. Is there a checklist? I want the, and like the checklist exists in here, and this is amazing, but when it comes time to act, because it turns out you're unique, there's no path. And as soon as you bump up against no path, it's called new and novel. Right? As soon as you're going to do something new and novel, this really crazy thing shows up every time. Right? And it does the same thing to us. You know, you start to feel a little surrounded and worried and concerned and like, wait, there's no path. I was literally just having this conversation with Emily about my use of voice. Like I have a goal to never touch a keyboard again. And we're releasing books. Well, that doesn't really work very well. So what if we just did audiobooks? Well, I don't really want to deal with audio. What if we just did audiobooks as a podcast? Well, has anybody ever done that? No, nobody's ever. Oh, no. Like, nobody's ever. What do you do? Like, there is no path. And so when this crazy thing, fear, shows up, I sort of am curious about how we deal with that. Because in order, if you're able, sorry, I didn't even give you time to find, like, what is the one thing? I'm hoping that over the next 30 minutes, we can, and there's this really interesting app on your phone. It's super high tech. It's on all the iPhones. If you're on Android, I don't know how to help you, but there's this really crazy app. It's called Notes. It's wild. Like you can type into it, all right? I'm wondering if maybe by the time we leave, you could just have one thing. And here's the question I would ask. And I would love it if you just sink in, like get out of your head for a second, like feel this. What's the one thing that if you did it next week, or at least started it next week, it would have a massive impact on your life or your business? Like, I know you know. Like, I know exactly what it is. Now, the challenge, of course, is going to be the fear that starts popping up when we have to deal with the difference between knowing what it is and actually doing the thing. It turns out knowing is really easy. Right? Like tactics are actually quite simple to find. Easy is not the right word, sorry about that. Knowing is really simple. It's typically a Google search away. Here's what I'm hoping. I really want to live in a world. This quote has driven me crazy for like 10 years. Be who you really are and go the whole way. What in the world does that mean? You know, like there's a whole lifetime of unpacking in figuring out who I really am, but what does it mean to go the whole way? Like, what if? What if you did the thing you've always wanted to do? Like, what if you did it? What if you didn't? What if I didn't touch a keyboard again for the rest of my life, and I only dealt in voice and video? What, like, is that allowed? What? That's not allowed? What if? You know what I mean? Like, what if you built the business that you really wanted to build? What if you made the impact that you'd been hoping for? What if you did? Because what's cool about being who you really are and going the whole way is there is no competition. Right? There is no competition for who you are. That's fascinating to me. So let me tell you a couple of stories. So here's my hope. You can identify a thing. I'm going to tell you some stories to sort of hope that it surfaces a bit. And then we're going to return for the last 7 minutes and talk about what to do with the fear. Because one of my goals is to kind of leave you no place to hide. I think you have no place to hide after this conference. There's no tactical place to hide. You don't have to wonder how. Right now, it's purely just a function of can I do it? And when there's no place left to hide, what we're left with, when we ask questions like, okay, if you know what to do and you haven't done it, why haven't you done it? We're just left with fear, I think, or laziness, but I just don't see that here. So if we're left with fear, now we know what we're dealing with. Like, and that, to me, is an exciting conversation. Right? So we're going to circle back to that. First, I just want to tell you some story. Oh, geez, a housekeeping item. Everybody's asked about this manifesto. I wrote this book that you can't buy. Michael Kitsis, it drives him nuts because he's like, where do I get it? And I say, you can't have one. Sorry, Kitsis. You have to write your own damn book, Michael. I'm just kidding. Well, Michael and I are really good friends, and I love trolling him. It's my favorite activity. That's what the whole purpose of the Blue Couch is to troll Michael. So anyway, the manifesto, there are some of them outside. They won't be out until after Angel's done, so there's no need to go see. There's some of them outside, but if you don't get one, you can get the digital version there, thesocietyofadvice.com/manifesto. Okay, so first, this crazy thing happened to me while I was living here in Las Vegas, just 20 minutes away at the base of Red Rock Canyon in a little suburb called Summerlin. I was a solo financial advisor. I'd left a big brokerage firm, which will go unnamed, but has a bull as its symbol, is owned by a bank. And I left because I wanted to be, this is a true story, I wanted to be a fiduciary. I wanted to be able to say I was a fiduciary, right? Somebody in here that likes to yell about that? I can't see the yellow guy. And I remember my greatest disappointment was that nobody seemed to care. when I ran around telling them I was a fiduciary, which is super ironic given this conference, right? But I got this email. Lonely little guy working in a solo office, never took a writing class in my life. At the University of Utah, you can skip all the writing classes. Actually, that's BYU. You can't do that at the University of Utah. So those of you who, anyway. Somebody will appreciate that joke, I'm sure. So I get this email from Ron Lieber, and I show the email because people often don't believe me. I'd never really written anything for anybody. I'd put stuff up publicly. My mom and my sister were reading it. I was pretty sure my sister was lying. So it was just like this little thing called Behavior Gap. A guy and a financial advisor named Kent Garelish, who I owe my firstborn son to, sent an email to Ron Lieber. He didn't know Ron. He just sent a random email saying, hey, you might like this, Ron. I've asked Ron. We've become really good friends. I've asked him since, like, why did you open that email from Kent? And on top of that, why did you click on the link? And Ron's literally like, I don't know. Right? Like, I get hundreds of emails a day from people like you pitching things like this. I don't know. But he opened it, which is a whole other topic, right? Like increasing luck surface area. I'm a huge fan of luck, like a huge fan of it, but I'm also a big fan of increasing the surface area of it. So I'm playing in traffic a bit. Somehow, got lucky. Ron opens an email. He says, do you want to do this thing? I was like, sure. What does it look like? He said, okay, well, I'll introduce you to our readers, and I'll ask for questions, and then you can write 450 words and one of those things you draw. He wasn't sure what to call them. I wasn't either. Have you ever tried writing 450 words? Like answering a question 450 words? It's way harder than 2,000. I stay up all night. The first one was this. I thought it was really clever. Right, it runs in the New York Times. I'm super excited. I'm a kid from the hills in Utah. I've never taken a writing class. It makes my mom proud. I'm so excited. I log in. There's 31 comments. Where I'm from, we're nice. We're nice to strangers, especially. I think 31 comments. This is incredible. I was thinking, congratulations, kid. You made it to the big leagues. I open them, and it's just brutal, right? Like, apparently the New York Times, people who comment in the New York Times back then, at least, didn't follow the same rules as we have in Utah about being nice. So I read them. I was like, oh, no. I called my mom. We got through that. I called Ron, and I'm like, Ron, listen, if this is the way it's going to be, I have to be able to take the gloves off, too. And he said, Carl, it's an opinion piece. Do whatever you want. This one ran next. Now, I need to point out, how long ago was this before anybody leaves? 2009, right? Things were simpler back then, right? And I made a huge mistake. I have 3 girls, and I would never, ever, ever want them to feel less capable of making financial decisions than anybody else, right? That was a big mistake. But stereotypically, you know what I was getting at. Now, if you want to have an interesting time, make fun of teenage girls in the New York Times and see what happens to you in the comment section, right? Okay, so that led to this column for every week for 10 years, right? And every single week, which I'm going to return to every single week, I remember thinking, what the hell am I doing? Like, I'm a kid from the hills in Utah. I don't know what is going on, and I'm going to return to that in a minute. Leads to, I get this email from Parsons. Anybody know about Parsons School of Design? Where I'm from, we don't know about that kind of stuff. I'm like, Parsons School of Design. And then this is what the email says. There's 3 words in this email that I did not understand. The first one was work, like your work. It's like, oh, that's interesting. The second one was illustration, and the last one was exhibition. Or exhibit. All of those are words I did not know what they meant. So I actually replied, I think you have the wrong person. They said, no, there's this. I said, all right, great. I'd love to do it. I fly out to New York. This is a gallery that faces Fifth Avenue, right next to the Forbes building. And we run this we did this art show, and the other people there anyway. This is up on the wall when I get there. This was my attempt to describe volatility to my mother one day. That's actually a true story. Stocks wiggle more than bonds. The only downside, of course, was cash. Normally it doesn't go negative, but the Sharpie isn't that precise, so I missed that one. Then this was up on the wall. A lady comes up to me. We're in a gallery, and these are on the wall. And you know the thing when the artist is in the gallery and people come up and they ask you questions and they point to your work? Have you been to one of these things? There's no like food, you get it off trays and stuff. This lady walks up to me, I swear she was wearing a beret and a scarf, she probably wasn't, but that's what the story is. And she says, first she said, what was this? That's so additive to the piece. And I was like, I think that's a piece of felt on the Sharpie. Like it was just an accident. And then this was up on the wall, and she's like, oh, she said, I love your work. And I was like, wait, you mean this? And she said, yes. And I said, okay. And then she's like, I love how the lines get thicker in the bottom. It really demonstrates the stress you were under. And I said, no, when you press harder on a Sharpie, it makes a fatter line. She said, okay, you don't even understand your own work. And I was like, okay. Then another lady raises her hand and says, who are your early influences? I was like, come on. There was like cardstock and cardboard. Like, it's fine. And then this leads to the mansion house. I promise these all have a point. This isn't just therapeutic for me, which it is, very, very therapeutic, actually. Then I get this crazy email from my friend Greg in London. Greg's the head of a huge bank in London and super smart guy. And he's going to do this thing he's calling a stock market opera, which was unbelievable. And like the notes, the singers, there was amazing, like we're in London, amazing singers at all these different stations, and they were doing outcries like at a pit, like at an old-fashioned stock market. And what they sang was based on the trades going up and down. It was the most amazing thing ever. He invites me, he's like, as part of it, we'd like to do an art show, and we'd like you to exhibit in the great Egyptian hall of the mansion house. And I was like, whatever. And then I type it in, I'm like, oh, that's like the last city palace in London, and it's where the Lord Mayor lives. Okay, so I'm like, this will be fun. It looks like that. Remember, I'm from Utah. Right? We don't have anything that looks quite like this. I show up with my dad, and we thought we would just hammer into the wall and hang things up in the great Egyptian hall. Turns out you don't hammer into the wall. So we had to build all these fake walls. So this is the first time I've told this story actually in public, so I hope you are all fine hearing this. We build these fake walls, and so I just want to point something out. Here's my chalkboard. Here's an actual Dutch master. Right? So I come out, and the guys who are hanging the art, are like, you can't see it, but this guy's like, what in the hell is this stuff? And look, and I was like, hey, boys, just hang the art. Like, it's okay. We don't need any commentary from the people. Okay, so that was the mansion house. So now let's get back to the point, right? Every single Thursday, at 10 o'clock in the morning in Utah, I was supposed to send in a column. And this interesting thing would happen. I would use Sharpie and cardstock. One time I bought like a wooden, almost like a cigar box, not a cigar box, but like a wooden box, and I filled it with Sharpies, so I would open the wooden box, so it would feel a little bit more like I was doing something. I mean, come on, you gotta give me something. So I'd open the wooden box, take out a Sharpie. Cardstock, throwing it over my shoulder, like messing up, disaster. And then I would take it, this is in Utah, staring out in the mountains, and I would walk over to the Fujitsu snap scanner. Like, I didn't have a glass flatbed scanner. It was a Fujitsu snap scanner. And I would scan it in, and then I'd send that plus the column. And every time, right when I hit send, I would feel this really interesting, like it felt like somebody was watching. And I would look over my left shoulder to where the door was. And we had one of those smoked glass. I had one of those smoked glass doors in the office, which I often called the studio to make myself feel a little better. I'd look over it, and you couldn't tell that there was a person out there, but you couldn't tell who it was, male, female, anything. You just see the shape, right? That smoked glass. And I had this feeling that there was a guy out there, and this guy would open the door almost every Thursday for 10 years, and he would look in. and he would look just like Mr. Burns. And he would look in, there was two versions of this experience. One was, he would look in and say, "What's going on in here? Is that a snap scanner? You're in Utah." Do they wait till they find out who you really are? Right? It's over. And then you close the door and walk out. Whew, right? The other version of that was he would walk all the way in, and he'd go to this big switch on the wall. It was like the giant circuit breaker train switches, huge ones. And it said Carl's career above it, and it was in the on position. And he would grab it, look at me, laugh, and throw it to the off position. I was like, oh, wow. Now that one didn't happen every week, luckily, but he showed up every week. So I was like, well, wait, what is this feeling? And it started to get to the point where it felt a little bit paralyzing, right? Like when I walked in and these guys, actually, you know what? Let me tell you another story real quick, because this is an interesting experience as well. I grew up in Park City, Utah, and I took a pottery class when I was 8 at the Kimball Art Center. And so I was a huge fan of the Kimball Art Center. I was 8, right? I'm a big fan of my hometown. The Kimball Art Center is like ground zero for Sundance Film Festival. In my mind, it's kind of a big deal. Punches way above its weight culturally. And they said, hey, would you do a solo? We'd like to invite you to do a solo. This was the first art show. We'd like you to do a solo art show, 8 weeks, 50 pieces. And again, I was like, 50 pieces, solo. Can you please explain all these words? So I invited my art friend over, my buddy Nelson Parrish, who makes these amazing totems. He's an actual artist. People pay him money. And I was like, Nelson, what do I do? Like, I don't know I don't even know what a piece is. Like, what does this mean? Like, he's like, and I was drawing all these things on this old weathered chalkboard I had in my office. And he was like, hey, what if we just took old weathered chalkboards and napkins and pieces of cardboard, and you made art into them? And I was like, dude, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Like, let's try it, So we designed these big chalkboards, and I was like, how are we going to price them? So I went on a search, because in our industry, right, you can find comps. Like, how do you price things? So I was like, how do you price art? Does anybody else know where this book is? Like, how you price art? We couldn't find it. So we decided to price it per square foot. Seemed like a reasonable way to me. And then I ran the math. I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. So we priced, this was $3,000 or something. And oh, okay, let's just do that. So we ran all these chalkboards. We did all these letterpress prints. We did these framed napkins, which are here in the back. And as part of this, we had all the kids from not all the kids from Salt Lake, but all the kids from Park City, and then a couple schools from Salt Lake would come through during the 8 weeks. And this show sold out. Every piece on the wall sold, which was nuts. And then these kids would come, and I had some little smart 17-year-old from the art class say to me, she was really, really socially progressive. And she said, don't you find it ironic that you've priced this art about how to save money so expensively? And why do you think it's worth this much? Because I could draw this. And I was like, yeah. Same feeling came back, right? Mr. Burns again. So what do we do about this feeling? I got to get back to this other presentation that we were doing. What do we do about this feeling? So I have a different approach for this. Fear has kept me alive. I know I can think of specific instances where me being fearful saved my life. Fear has arguably kept us alive as a species. That does not seem like someone I want to kick in the teeth. You know what I mean? Like, kick fear in the teeth. No fear. So I tried that for a while. Like, no, I'm not fear. I'll pump myself up. I'll get really excited. I'm not scared. I tried that for a while. And I found that the more I resisted, the more it persisted. So then I was like, well, wait. I noticed something. Mr. Burns was at the Mansion House in London. Mr. Burns was in my office every Thursday. Mr. Burns was like, when I was sitting right there yesterday watching Andrew present, I was like, bro, how, what? Like, I talked to him afterwards, we're friends. And I was like, Andrew, I gotta go figure out what I'm gonna say tomorrow. He's like, figure out what you're gonna say? Like, I've known what I was gonna say for 3 years. Like, I've been practicing every single thing. And I was like, oh no, is that what you're supposed to do when you're a pro? Like, are you supposed to know what you, like, and I went to bed and was like terrified. And anybody who saw me last night was like, are you okay? Like, and then even this morning, I'm like, I don't have anything to say. Fear was here. Mr. Burns was here. Then one day, I was at a mountain bike race. It was gonna take me it was a long 8 to 10 hour mountain bike race. I didn't know if I would finish. And I remember looking in this, my wife was there at the start line, and I saw behind my wife, this weird guy. And then I was like, oh man, I started reviewing, like, at my wedding, Mr. Burns was there. Now, I'm not suggesting you personify imposter syndrome with Mr. Burns. You can pick your own, right? You can if you want, but Mr. Burns was there. The birth of my first child, the birth of all 4 of my kids. Everything I've ever done that turned out to be cool, Mr. Burns was at the party. So I started to think, like, why am I trying to get rid of him? Wouldn't I want him around more often? Right? And I think this is a specific strain of fear called imposter syndrome. Right? A specific strain of fear. And I realize there is imposter syndrome that's debilitating, and I'm not necessarily talking about that piece, but I'm talking about something close. So instead of trying to conquer imposter syndrome or get rid of imposter syndrome, I'm a big fan of this idea of what if I can treat imposter syndrome as fuel? Right, what if I can learn? And let me just talk a little, just real quickly, about how imposter syndrome shows up. So, imposter syndrome, one of the technical definitions is the inability to internalize your value despite external evidence to the contrary. Right? And it shows up in a couple of ways. I think of them as archetypes. And I think there's 7, but I'm just going to go through 2 or 3. One is newbie, like the archetype of being a newbie. That's when you actually are an imposter. Right? You're new at this. It's new and novel. You've never done any of it before. So what do you do when you've never done any of it before? Right? I don't love the fake it till you make it idea pushed to the edge, right? I don't love that because we've seen people go to jail for that kind of stuff. That's also called lying, you know? But there's something about this idea that, like, can I find where my capacity or my set of skill is, and can I match it to problems that are 10% below my limit, right? And can I just keep sort of moving that up? So, like, we just practice trying new and novel things you've never done before. And we're not talking about practicing answering a technical question that you don't know the answer to by faking it, right? But we're talking about showing up and doing public work, putting yourself at risk for good things to happen. That's a different, we're not talking about, like, if you're a newbie paramedic, right? We're not talking about pretending you know how to save somebody. We're talking about the feeling you already know, like you have the skill, you've trained for this, you know how to use the calculator and the spreadsheet, it's fine. Now the fear of, like, doing it in public, doing it for the first time. Well, how do we do that? Well, we practice, right? That's just a function of practice. You learn to feel that feeling. Like, I know, like I sat there listening to Andrew and I felt it and I was like, oh no, and then I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I know this feeling, right? And I know what to do with it. So when we're new, we just learn to practice. And then I want to point one other archetype of imposter syndrome out. Well, 2 others. One is the self-aware superhero. And the self-aware superhero, a lot of you can probably relate to. Imposter syndrome doesn't go away. Like, the research is pretty clear about this. It doesn't go away. In fact, there's evidence to say it increases with success. And I think that's because, let's see if I can find a blank piece of paper. Blank piece of paper. Everybody get that joke? I think it's because as we get more successful, right, as our careers, and they don't ever look like this, I know they look like this, you know. But as we get more successful, there's a lot further to fall. right? And so that's why imposter syndrome doesn't go away. I believe, whatever, maybe I'm here. I believe that's why I felt it yesterday while Andrew was talking. It was like, oh, I've done this before, and if I fall, that's a long ways down. So the self-aware superhero is somebody who knows, like, hey, I've done this before. And, oh my gosh, two more archetypes, quick. The lucky one, and this is really classic among experienced advisors who've built businesses, who are like, man, I don't know, maybe it was all just luck. And how do you solve for the lucky one? Well, you rely on external evidence. And this is a bummer. I don't like doing it, but I keep a Stoke file. I call it the Stoke file. It's like positive reviews. It's the opposite of what Manish was talking. I don't keep a hater file. I keep a Stoke file. I keep a love file. And those are like, fine, keep a hater file. That's fine too. I like keeping a love file. It's called the Stoke file. And when I'm feeling like, oh no, somebody's going to find out, I can go read, wait, that's right. Somebody 10 years ago told me this was good. Somebody last week told me this was good. So a Stoke file is the lucky one solution. And then the last archetype that I want to just point out real quick is called the never this. I'm a big fan of playing in the never this. The never this is like somebody who's done lots of things. Let me give you an example. Rob Bell, ran this huge, gigantic church, becomes a speaker. He'd given lots of sermons. Rob Bell, actually, I asked him about imposter syndrome. He told me he used to have this dream where he's like, look, I'm 26, I'm running one of the biggest churches in the country. I'm in the boardroom, everybody's looking to me, I'm wondering where the adult is. I drive in the car, in my dream I'm driving in the car, and a policeman pulls me over. And out of the car gets God. And he walks up and he taps on the window and he's like, give me the keys, right? Did you think I was gonna let you drive? Like that was his version of Mr. Burns showing up, right? Rob said what I do when I'm doing a new performance is because he was doing things on like comedy stages. He said I would walk out, there was no pulpit. The lighting was different. There was a mic stand in the middle of the floor, and I'd have this really scary feeling, and then I would remember, I've done this 1,000 times before. And I was like, wait, no, you haven't. You haven't done that 1,000 times. He's like, no, I've felt that feeling, and I've done it anyway 1,000 times before. So never this is like you get really comfortable with the idea of I know how to do new and novel things. To me, that's a key to giving advice too, right? Giving advice requires you to give really important, helping people with financial decisions, it requires you to give really important advice in the face of irreducible uncertainty. Things you haven't seen. You're seeing things right now that you've never seen in your career before. Oh no, are you dead? No, you've proven to yourself that you know how to make decisions in the face of irreducible uncertainty. It's never this, but you're a never this in that instance, right? So that imposter syndrome, don't expect it to go away because it doesn't go away, right? It keeps showing up. And so my approach has been to it recently, actually the last 10 years, is to strip away all the places I used to hide from Mr. Burns. What color is the logo? Which email system should I use? Should I get another professional designation? Kitsis has 17, why do I only have one? Right? Like where can I hide? Compliance, that's your favorite place to hide. Right? And so my question to you is, what if you stripped all those away and you just sat with the fear a little bit? And you did this. So I'm going to just suggest one last thing before I wrap up. Return back to the one thing. Like I wish we had time to just sort of sit for a minute. Right? What is the one thing? I would love it, by the way, if you'd email it to me. It may or may not be used against you. Right? hello@behaviorgap.com, hello@behaviorgap.com. Like, what's the one thing that if you did it, you already know what it is. I have no idea what it is for you. Right? But I know what mine is. Right? What's the one thing that if you did it, it would change your life and your business and thereby an impact in your community? Then when the fear shows up, can I just suggest, notice how it feels. Like get clear about where it is in the body. I know the color, right? For heaven's sakes, I've personified it. Elizabeth Gilbert says, treat imposter syndrome like a crazy uncle that can come on the trip but don't ever allow them to drive. I mean, like, hey, bro, I got this. This is just an email. Everything's going to be fine. Nobody's going to die. So with that, one last story about this. Reportedly, or the wisdom tradition has it, that the Buddha was teaching under a Bodhi tree. There's a big crowd, and way back in the bushes, apparently Mara, who plays the role of the mischievous devil, was causing a little bit of trouble in the bushes. Right? And one of the Buddha's attendants came and said, Buddha, with a look of concern, Buddha, Mara's here. And he said, oh, good, invite her in for tea. And I feel that so deeply. Be who you really are and go all the way. I'm begging you to do that because we need you. I want to live in a world where you are who you really are, right? It's 10 times more interesting. I'm not interested in anything else. And I know what shows up. And for some of you, there's legitimate reasons to not be who you really are some days for legitimate safety concerns, and to you, deep empathy. But to the degree that we can we just start saying, oh, there's that feeling, right? Welcome back, Mr. Burns. I'm glad you're here. Let's get to work. Or, right, good, invite her in for tea. And with that, my friends, thank you very much for your attention.